We knew that the retirement landscape was shifting 25 years ago. I don't know that anybody knew truly how profound that shift would be.
Right.
It's still critically important that not only we help educate people, but at least raise awareness among people the importance of educating themselves. Because in the end, nobody cares more about your retirement than you and your family.
Welcome to the Tao of Chow podcast, where we will try to find balance and provide a clearer path forward in this uncertain world. She champions Americans who are at risk of not achieving a financially secure retirement. She oversees all of the organization's research and outreach initiatives, including the annual Transamerica Retirement Survey. In 2024, Catherine received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Plan Sponsor Council of America for her contributions to the retirement plan industry and dedication to improvement in retirement outcomes for employees. In 2018, Catherine was recognized as an influencer in aging by PBS Next Avenue for her work in continuing to push beyond traditional boundaries and change our society's understanding of what it means to grow older. In 2016, she was honored with a Hero Award from the Women's Institute for a Secure Retirement, WISER, for her tireless efforts in helping women to improve retirement security. Catherine serves on the Leadership Council of the Milken Institute's Center for Future of Aging, the Executive Committee of the SIA, Defined Contribution Institutional Investment Association, the Advisory Board of WISER, and the Editorial Review Board of the Retirement Management Journal. Catherine earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in British and American Literature at Scripps College, Claremont, California. And here is Catherine. So Catherine, thank you so much for taking a bit of the time out of your day to spend with me. Appreciate it. I've known you by name for a long time. This is truly the first time we're spending really a slug of time, and I've been looking forward to it. So thank you. I know recently I was searching, as in, 6 months ago maybe, looking at some things, and then I ran into your latest survey, the 2025 survey, which is the 25th year of survey for Transamerica. And is voluminous and is great information, is fantastic. I would do injustice try to summarize it because it's so rich. But what I would do is, just to get us started, I'll read just a couple of sort of statistics that put some boundary maybe to our conversation, if that's okay. I will actually cite the page on 35. The 35th page, it says, based on your survey, it says 2 in 3, which is 68%, feel that they could work until retirement and still not save enough to meet their needs. That is a little scary, 2/3, right? 55% are still financially recovering from COVID. I would have never known that. Fascinating, that what COVID has done to the population in this country, let alone the world. 24% are very confident, I like that statistic, that they will be able to fully retire within a comfortable lifestyle. But when I read that, because I'm an investment professional, I always think it's the overconfidence bias. How do they know they are, that confident? Did they do a plan? Did they, or they just felt that they were confident? So it's interesting. 36% expect to retire at age 70 plus. There's a dash plus, or do not plan to retire. I would love to spend a little time with you, the definition of retirement. All right, that's a huge area. Over 53% plan to work at least part-time in retirement, which goes with the prior statistics of 36%. 83% are saving for retirement in a 401k or similar plan and or outside the workplace, 83%. That also means 17% are not saving at all. So that's scary also. Age 26 is the age or median, which is the middle, that employed workers who are investing for retirement starting to save. I think statistics, and you will tell me if I'm right or wrong, is actually getting younger, not older, to start saving. Some of the other statistics I read. 10 is the percentage median of their annual salary that plan participants are contributing. So they are deferring 10%. That's encouraging. We like 15, but we're still at 10, but it's better than 8 or 6. Greater than 1 in 3, 37%, have taken a loan, early withdrawal, or other hardship, which we probably will touch on. Are we looking at this as a savings account? Are we looking at this as retirement? And also some secure 1.0, 2.0, and come in and talk about other alternatives. And then finally, the 82,000 is the amount saved in all household retirement accounts, also a median. So all household, in other words, husband, wife, husband, whatever, the two people are, together is not just one person. Well, there may be a one person working, but your household is a significant thing. It's not per person at 82. And that seems to me a low number. So those are the statistics I just read off page 35. I think we can spend 5 hours talking about this, which I won't. I think before we get started on any of these, they're so rich in content. I mentioned to you that I would love to know, because you did something that's really interesting. You did your report in cohorts or in generations, which is really lovely to do because they are all not the same. So maybe I'll stop talking because I'm so excited about this topic and let you please tell us a little bit about your survey and your concept and your framework, and maybe give us some teaser and what you found out.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And thank you for sharing all of the findings from the survey. And I'll back up a little bit. Thank you for acknowledging our survey's now in its 25th year. And of course, it's grown and evolved over the years. Way back when, once upon a time, it was a telephone survey when people still had landlines. So,
oh, wow. What is that?
And one of the survey questions was, do you have internet access?
Wow.
So the world has changed.
Sure.
And right now, this iteration of the survey, which is our 25th annual survey, our overall sample population is more than 10,000 respondents. We engage Harris Poll to conduct the survey on our behalf. Our small team doesn't have the reach to get to 10,000 people, and Harris Poll does a terrific job. And essentially what the goals of the survey have been over time. Once upon a time when we started doing it, we knew that the retirement landscape was shifting 25 years ago, with defined benefit plans sort of fading, at least in the private sector, and the increase and the proliferation of defined contribution plans. Of course, I don't know that anybody knew truly how profound that shift would be, but it certainly has been. And even early on, we were looking at generations. Of course, it was Gen X and boomers. Millennials hadn't entered the workforce yet. And so it's been fascinating over time to look at now boomers, the generation that is retiring, and some still in the workforce, but retirement's pretty close on the horizon. Gen X just started turning 60 this year, which is amazing. We have millennials in their peak earning years and Gen Z entering the workforce. So a lot has changed over time, and as have people's attitudes and behaviors and awareness to save for retirement. We also live in a time of uncertainty. People are reading the headlines. The Social Security trust funds that is estimated to be depleted within 10 years. There's concerns about that. Younger workers are far less likely to have a traditional pension than the older workers, than the boomers. Things have changed, and the big continuing change is increasingly people are expected to self-fund a greater portion of the retirement income. So with the stat that you opened with, the idea that people are worried that they could work until retirement and not save enough, they're responding to that question with the mindset, knowing the expectations of having to self-fund a portion, a greater portion of the retirement income, counting on their employer-sponsored benefits and their 401ks. And people know the importance of saving. How boomers were well into their careers before having access to 401ks. Um, and they didn't start saving till retirement till about 35. Gen Z, a very high percentage, around 7 and 10 are saving, and they started at age 20.
Mm.
So imagine that, having a full extra
Yeah.
15 years on their savings horizon.
Yes. Yes.
But you've also touched on some other things. We have savings trajectories and can look at numbers and project forward, but our world is unpredictable, and life happens to people. And the pandemic question, asking people about the recovery from the pandemic, and the news cycle moves on, the economy's moved on, but a lot of people found themselves having employment setbacks during the pandemic, either laid off or furloughed or having to step out of the workforce because of the pandemic. And any setbacks to employment can have long-term implications for people's future retirement.
For sure. For sure. One thing that I know you know this very well, I just want to bring it up. Although it is to celebrate that the Gen Zs are starting at age 20, which is some 15 years, but the chance of them become a centurion is greater than the boomers. So they have a longer lifespan to support themselves, either directly or indirectly. And so this whole notion is not only we're not saving enough at regular retirement age of 65, 67, whatever age you want to determine that to be regular, whatever that even means anymore. It's that much harder for Gen Zs and the new generations behind them, if they are fortunate enough to live closer to 100. And so we kind of totally redefine thinking about what is a normal retirement age. More importantly, what is a normal retirement? I mean, what does that really mean, right? So love to hear your thoughts on if you have any data or any discussion or conversation, either via survey or off survey. What are people thinking? They know they have probably undersaved. Maybe they haven't undersaved. Doesn't matter. But they are not really thinking a very extra long period of time where there is no active income.
Mm-hmm. Well, something that we've seen in our research for quite a number of years now, that is a disconnect from conventional ideas about retirement. For many people, work and retirement are not mutually exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And as we've looked back easily a decade, many people, especially employed workers, which this is the sample population that our survey is based off of, and our survey report, they envision a phased and flexible transition. So instead of working full-time one day, full blast, full-time one day, never again the next, people envision a more gradual transition, either pulling back on hours, maybe responsibilities, but staying in it, or maybe doing something new and entirely different, having an encore career, maybe doing consulting, starting a business. And what I find so interesting, when we compare employed workers with people who are self-employed, it really becomes clear that for employed workers, retirement is, I'll just say it, it's kind of a graduation from the rat race, the corporate rat race. Yeah. Whereas for self-employed people, the idea of retirement is somewhat irrelevant. If they love what they do, why give it up because they reach a certain age? Yeah. And so some big differences there.
So at the end, it's really thinking about, it's not a date specific event anymore. In the sense, in the traditional way, I get my Go Watch, I get my whatever, and I leave, and I never work again per se. Back in the 50s or whatever, when the unions and all that, work 40 years, you're going to get 60% of pre-retirement income or whatever the amount of income, and you sail off to the sunset and goodbye. That is no longer the picture, or at least that's not a reality for most people. For either out of necessity or out of desire, that I want to just do nothing and watch paint dry every day? Or is it that I still feel that I should challenge my mind? I still have the mental capacity. I don't feel like that I am just going to be like sit somewhere and die, because I still have a lot of life left, and I want to contribute to myself, to my family, to my country, or to my neighborhood, whatever that may be. So I think that seems like more contemporary than the past. Um,
It it does. And when we look at people who expect to work beyond traditional retirement age and or continue work in retirement, we ask them reasons why.
yeah.
Um, and it's just as often what we call healthy aging reasons as
Mhm.
financial. And of
Mm.
course, wanting the income or benefits or shoring up a savings shortfall can be really important to people. But also quite a few people, they want to keep working because they enjoy what they do. They want to stay active, a sense of
Mm.
purpose, social connections, keeping our
Yeah.
brain alert. There are other benefits to work as well, especially if you have a job and the kind of work that you love to do.
So let's just take a moment on that topic, which I would talk about aging population. Aging populations really have two components, as you know well. One is we're getting married later as a society, or married at all. And if we're married, we're having fewer children later as well. So we're shifting everything forward. And at the same time, people are living longer. So if you add the two components together, fewer birth and living longer, of course, the median age is going to keep getting older. That's not a trend just here, but trend is just about the
Mhm.
whole world. I believe South Korea is the leading indicator, not Japan apparently, but South Korea, who are growing older faster than any other country in the world. I heard China is at 50% replacement rate. They're not having kids.
Yeah.
China. So in 30 years, 40 years, they will only have half of the number of people alive, or whatever. So there's a significant change. With that said, do you, through your survey, or when you question surveyors, do you get a sense that as a country we are getting more used to older people? Because at one time, old people, old fogies, we worship the young. I mean, the Western culture has always been very much worship the young. Um, but as fewer and fewer young and more old, and more people staying, do you see an attitudinal change in our society yet, or not really yet?
Well, and how we approach it, and we approach it from different angles. One is we ask survey respondents, it's a level of agreement question. I have a positive view of aging.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
the majority of people do. It's around 7 and 10, maybe even
Well,
closer
that's
to 8
good.
and 10.
That's good.
So, and there's academic work and research. Becca Levy at Yale has done extraordinary
Yeah.
research that people who have a positive view of aging tend to age better and in better health
Yes.
than those who view aging as a time of decline.
Yes.
So
I
we
may
all
I
need to embrace our positive view of aging.
may I
Uh,
ask you to change the word next time you ask that question? Do you have a positive image of the aged, not aging? I'm just
and
kidding. I'm kidding.
and
Yeah.
but no, this is and it's something, of course, aging enthusiasts, people are enthusiastic about the topic of aging, not necessarily aging ourselves, but
Right.
it's such a big topic of conversation,
Yeah.
ageism. And we know the classic, what we'll call the classic long-standing stereotypes of
Yeah.
that were just sort of re-emphasized in the media. The I've fallen and I can't get up. Um,
Yes. Oh, the clapper lights.
and the clapper, which actually sounds like a pretty handy, handy little gadget.
Yes.
Um, but if we look at things now, how people are living and working, and even even through movies and television, we see a lot of intergenerational connections and and pushing boundaries and people living their lives
Yes.
in ways that are truly inspiring. Um, so I'm more of the mindset that people's hearts and minds about aging are changing due to just exposure, intergenerational connections, and and I will say, and I think a number of my contemporaries feel this way, having reached a certain age myself, feeling a sense of responsibility to age by example.
Yeah.
Sort of like leading by example, aging by example, and getting out and do things and staying active and having
Yes.
fun and meeting people of all ages.
Yes. So that the baby boomer generation's last effort to remain relevant, and I understand that. And quite frankly, it's nothing wrong with that. And if the boomers are leading by example, hopefully, because the next generation will behind them will continue that trend. Is that if boomers are capable and able and willing to continue to contribute to society, either starting new business or consulting or whatever. Why shouldn't they do it? Because they have the knowledge, they have the wisdom, they have the experience, and they can continue to contribute. As long as they are not there to stop the next generation rising up. And so there's always a conflict for companies to think about all that. Thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Oh, I do. You pressed a button. Actually, there's two sets of thoughts. One on the topic of potential ageism in the workplace
Hmm.
and the need for what we like to call age-friendly employers, because people are living longer, needing to work longer so that the numbers add up and to help self-fund that retirement. But in our research of retirees, the median age they retired is 62. They're not making it to 65.
Yeah.
All too often to either due to personal health issues or employment related issues. If
Yes.
you're an older worker, say age 50 plus, every year that you get older, if you need to go find a job, it's going to get harder and harder
Hmm.
to get your resume through
Yeah.
the online firewalls and onto a hiring manager's desk. And there is a vast talent pool out there of people who are ready, willing, and able to work with
Yeah.
education, experience, expertise, maybe some new training and transferable skills to be focused on. But by and large, employers, even amid labor shortages, employers have been it seems like missing out on this talent pool in their recruiting efforts. The second thing, so that's one thing, is we need age-friendly employers. As our population ages and fewer young people, our economy depends on on a vibrant workforce, and to be able to include older individuals, as long as they need to work and are able to work, age age shouldn't matter.
Mhm.
Then then there's the other perception that I've heard, and I've heard mumblings. Yeah, this if you want to really start uh, raucous conversation, the perceptions that older workers are taking jobs and
Right.
promotion opportunities
Right.
for people to move up.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's any academic literature that supports it. An inclusive economy is a productive economy.
Yeah.
And maybe within certain organizations where there's long tenured employees and the organization isn't growing, and so the dynamic isn't there yet. But then there's also a lot of really fast growing companies out there, startups. Right now, we're in the middle of a technological revolution that I don't think anybody fully comprehends how huge it's going to be.
Hmm.
And that's the kind of environment where people of all ages, young and old, if you raise your hand and can figure it out, you're moving up.
That's fantastic. Um, I was just thinking, almost no conversation goes by any day without bringing up the two letters A and I. So how do you feel? I mean, I could make a case that AI will, if AI get to a place where we're really replacing meaningful number of workers, is it more likely to replace the experienced worker or the less experienced worker? In other words, is there advantage actually that you are older, that the wisdom and the experience are not so easily available through an AI. Whereas younger worker, I'm just making it up as I go
Yeah.
here, that the entry positions and so on, where it's really doing mundane work that AI perhaps can handle. And so there's actually, if my thesis is even close to true or accurate, then the truly older folks who have done this and have the experience, have the wisdom, have the acumen to do their job is probably less likely replaced because AI can't, assuming competing with AI, I'm talking about, that AI is less likely to be able to replace that set of skills vis-a-vis the other set of skills. What's your thought on? I don't know. I've never heard people talk about it, but I'm just wondering. Do you have
No,
any
okay.
thoughts on that?
And I have some personal opinions
Please,
and
please,
based on my own life experience. So
please.
for whatever they're worth. And also I've become a student of the topic because I'm fascinated by it. What jobs may be impacted? How might they be impacted?
Yeah,
Um, how potential productivity gains that could be made
right.
and and it and looking at it because there's so many unknowns.
Yeah.
It actually takes me back early in my career. My post college work.
Yes.
I
Yes.
started out in IT. That was my
Wow.
actually I was an
Wow.
English lit major in college,
Yeah.
and it was the 80s, and I got in a pickle one semester. I had to write 17 papers on my electric typewriter. Um, and I said to myself, there's got to be a better way. And I learned about this thing called a PC. And that became, I spent my entire winter break learning how to use the PC because it was going to make it easier for, for me to write my papers.
Right.
And it did, by the way. And it also propelled me to get a job in the computer lab at school. And then um, when I graduated, I had a unique skill set because
Mm,
nobody knew how to use PCs. And I went
hmm
into the corporate environment
mm,
and there was a lot of fear. Also, there was the migration from like old mainframe to online, or
yeah.
the computing power had changed, and then 10 years later, the internet's coming along.
Yeah.
And what makes technology successful is how well um, business, and I'm talking in a business environment, how well businesses can integrate them into their operations.
Mhm, mhm.
And there was one chapter in my career, one of the most, I would call it one of the most memorable, where I was on a team and we were kind of the cleanup crew because
Mm.
technology had been implemented, but the surrounding business processes had not. And it yielded some odd results that required some attention. Where we're at today, the success of generative AI and all of the different flavors of AI is really going to depend on the vision of people who use them, implement them, and integrate them into their operations
Yes. Yes.
in a meaningful way and with a whole new set of boundary guardrails and controls.
Yes.
'Cause we
Yes.
also know that we live in a very dynamic environment where guardrails and controls are becoming more important than ever.
Yes.
So, in terms of whose jobs might be affected, I think we all need to look in the mirror. But I see so much value for people of all ages. Older individuals have life experience. I'll use the word BS detector. Generative AI is known to produce hallucinations or inaccurate
Yeah.
output. And I think people with more life experience and expertise in their field will much more easily, in a much better position to detect it and question it than people who don't have that level of life experience
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
Um, on the other hand, it's all hands on deck figuring out how to work with it, how to use it, and it's all critical for younger people and people of all ages to still be masters of their skills and their expertise. The
Hmm.
real productivity gains that are going to come out of AI are the abilities and expertise of people to fully unleash its potential, to know how to write the prompts, to get it to do exactly what they want it to do, the imagination, the creation, the innovation. A tool isn't going to innovate for you. It is a tool that can help you innovate and collaborate with others. That's my view. And AI can also productivity gains when you think about like call centers, listening in on call centers, trying to figure out what service issues are and what the trends or blips or things that are coming up. Who has time to listen to thousands of hours
Sure.
of recordings? Whereas the technology can do it far faster and spot the trends and pinpoint, highlight the good things and the pain points.
A lot there, right? A lot of changes, and the final chapter obviously not written. I mean, I think we're probably at chapter 1, quite frankly, because like your point is application. We haven't quite got to the application, which is really where changes are significant. We're just still in the invention stage. So 5 years from now, we'll talk again, at least once. That will say, well, what happened the last 5 years? How did you, I think the change, but changes at a more rapid pace, because the computing power and all that is doubling quickly. Let's turn to, some of the statistics that I read about saving for retirement, which we understand is undersaved for most people have felt that they have undersaved. But during your conversation with them or during Harris Poll, do you find out, gosh, you undersave. Why do you undersave? When you know what you haven't done right, what are you doing about it? And what do they say? We just don't make enough money. There's too many other things tugging at our current need. Or can you enlighten us a little bit about, if you have answers to it? I'm just curious.
Okay. So in my take on it with people who are employed in the workforce, baby boomers got a late start. 401ks weren't available. They were already mid-career before they had the opportunity to save. Gen X, I lose sleep over. I lose so much sleep over Gen X. And in some ways, I would call this sort of societal sequence risk. In that, as they were entering the workforce, there were still fairly widespread assumptions about paternalistic employers, traditional pensions, and that didn't really materialize. 401ks came along, and employers, we know the adoption rates, we're still working on that. So if you're a Gen Xer in your 20s and lucky enough to work for an employer that offered a 401k plan, it was highly probable you might not have been aware how truly critical that was going to be to your future retirement. That messaging didn't exist because people didn't know. And some Gen Xers got a strong and early start, but others got a later start due to lack of access and lack of awareness. And that is no fault of their own. Millennials and Gen Z are far more aware of it, and they've started saving at an earlier age. One of the other things, though, that is challenging, because in my view of the world, is the single greatest ingredient to achieving a secure retirement is access to meaningful employment with retirement benefits throughout your working years. And we've had our economy, we've seen a lot of growth, but then we've also seen volatility that hadn't been seen since the Great Depression. So people getting started, we had the dot-com boom, the dot-com bust. Then we had the what many people refer to as the Great Recession. People got overextended. Some lost their homes. And all the way to 2019, we were asking people about their recovery from the Great Recession, which technically ended in 2009. And fewer than half said that they were fully recovered or had not been impacted. Then the pandemic comes along. So what's happening is with people on their savings journeys, they're working hard, they're saving, they have setbacks. And when you touched on the survey finding about people tapping into their savings before retirement, when we look at the reasons, by and large, it's like it's desperate measures or it's urgent situations. People are not frivolously
Yes.
using their 401ks as an ATM. There's compelling reasons why they find themselves doing so. And then another point, because I'm on a roll now,
Please.
is that I find so intriguing and fascinating is often we think about an employee, and this is industry. This is what I grew up with in the industry. We think about people's savings as an individual. And here's your savings goal. You're participating. This is your contribution. You got your asset allocation or your investment options. And think of it as a single person or as a married person, family, without fully understanding family, how broader family influences people's savings and even tapping into savings. So one of the things that we've seen is in reading verbatim responses why people took a loan or early withdrawal.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it was for a family member in distress. It could have been a parent, it could have been a sibling. Somebody in the family had a terrible car accident. It wasn't necessarily for their own situation. People are part of families. Families support each other. And the couple of really big things that we see going on, the prevalence of caregiving is intensifying. Right now, it's about 4 in 10 workers are currently serving or have served as a caregiver.
Yeah.
And among them, at least 8 in 10 have made some sort of adjustment to their employment. It could be reducing hours, using days. Some have gone to the extreme of quitting a job altogether. But these, caregiving out of love can have implications for their own employment, their own future promotability, earning power, and ability to save for their own retirement. And then I'll leave you with one more astonishing data point about Gen Z. And I think they, just doing the math, kind of the children of Gen X, and Gen X is squeezed right now. They societal sequence risk. Around 1 in 5 Gen Z workers cite supporting their parents as a current
Wow.
financial priority.
Wow. That's amazing.
So in the context of a plan sponsor and advisors, as they're working with individuals who could be employees through a plan or on their own, to really understand, in serving your customer, understanding what their overall circumstances are and not make assumptions that they're just worried about themselves and their spouse, that there's broader circumstances that could be at play.
So, would you say that overall, Americans are basically not saving enough, regardless it's for retirement or not, because there is not enough, saving for emergency? Sounds like because they are asking other family members to chip in for them, which is the point that you made that they borrowed, these Gen Z borrowed actually to help a family member because the family member didn't save enough, or they may have saved enough but they fall into hard times. I mean, whatever the reasons are. So at the end of the day, it appears that the job one is to start saving more than whatever you are doing because of tail risks, because there are risks that just came out of nowhere that we didn't think about, we didn't realize, but we love our family or we feel responsible and we're willing to go and almost harm our own financial situation just to help. And I totally understand that. But it's still a savings problem. That we're one of the richest countries in the world, or are one of the highest living standard. Let's not say the richest. We have one of the highest living standards in the world, but it seems like saving is not one of the highest at all, not even close. I know Secure, is it 1.0 that talked about having sidecar savings account in 401k plan, knowing that there's leakage from borrowing, so maybe we should help them through payroll deduction to do that. We also burden the retirement plan with student loan reduction and how the employer can also help to minimize the repayment responsibility. We're looking for these retirement plan to do just about everything except maybe cleaning your windows, over the weekend or something. Um, if we're already not saving enough for retirement, assuming that's not even assuming, it's clear we're not saving enough for retirement. I mean, on average, I'm not talking about everyone, but on average, what's the likelihood of us, number one, saving more, or what's the likelihood of us saving on the side, had nothing to do with retirement, but emergency, and helping family or whatever that may be? What's your thinking about that?
Um, and my greatest financial influence was my grandparents, who lived through the Great Depression.
Sure.
And it was always live within or beneath your means, because there's going to be a rainy day that comes along and you're going to need that savings.
Yeah.
And also proponents of saving for the future, saving for a time that you won't be working, and you'll need income above and beyond Social Security.
Yes.
One of the things that was so different about their generation was the lack of access to credit. If you couldn't afford dinner, you went hungry that night. You didn't put it on a credit card.
Yes.
Or a buy now, pay later card. And so our money mindset and how we manage our money, I think, is something that we all need to reconnect with. And debt it's so easy to spiral out of control.
Yes.
And to be able to, and I know I'm singing to the choir, financial literacy in schools is kids are growing up really learning how to manage their money and make the most of their money is just absolutely critical. And it will help them avoid missteps that can be difficult holes to dig out of. We have a new threat in existence now. And I'll go back to the credit card debt. When I went to college, my parents thought I needed to have a credit card in case I got in a pickle.
Yeah.
That meant I had to go to the bank with my mom and sit with the banker, and the banker gave me a lecture about being responsible.
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
And the only purposes that this card could be used. And then my mom had to co-sign it, and then and my dad, it was a family conversation about responsibility.
Yeah.
Now kids get applications in the mail or sign up when you sign up for school. You walk on campus and there's access. A new threat now is all the online betting and gambling.
Yes.
Which just makes it so easy for people to engage and lose money, and it's really scary. It can be people's unraveling. So and to educate and avoid.
Lots of temptations out there. So I think the issue remains unresolved. And by the time when we realize how unresolvable it is, it's already too late. Are you a believer in defaults? We're going to default you into a retirement savings vehicle. We're going to default you starting at 6% and go up typically 1% a year until 15. So auto escalation, auto enrollment, and put you in some kind of QDIA. Are you a big, strong believer of that in this case?
I am. And I am in the context of I'm a huge believer in making it as convenient as possible for people to save and invest, and removing obstacles that make it inconvenient.
Yeah.
And the auto enrollment, the auto escalation, back in the day in the 80s, late 80s, when I had first access to a 401k, I had to wait a year. My employer had a year-long eligibility, and then I had to fill out all of these forms and mail them in, and it was a hassle. I was going to get that match no matter what, but I had coworkers that it was too easy to procrastinate, and we know what happens. Time flies. It's easy for time to get away from you. So the defaults and the nudges that make it more convenient to save are are really super helpful. And the all the innovation that's taken place on the investing side,
Yes.
um, for people to have access to the professional guidance and expertise and various types of services that are available, can only help optimize their decision making, and a very good thing. That said, it's still critically important that not only we help educate people, but at least raise awareness among people the importance of educating themselves,
Mm,
that you've got to learn enough to ask
yeah.
good questions so you can make informed decisions. Because in the end, nobody cares more about your retirement than you and your family.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's turn to sort of the way that we have been thinking about retirement savings. We went from a defined benefit plan, which you mentioned at the top of our discussion, and now we don't have a defined benefit plan where we know how much we're going to get and we can never outlive it and for the rest of our lives. That whole regime is gone and understandably gone. It's just not affordable, frankly. Simply relying on your employer and retiring at age 62 back in the day when we're living to 85, 90 plus. I think Robert Redford just died slightly around 90 years old. I still remember when he did the move with Barbara Streisand. It seems like yesterday, but it's of course a long time ago. But anyways, so the question is, how do we think about? We have done a reasonably good job now that we have 401k, that we are making it a self-directed account-based, individual account-based retirement plan. And we try to educate people. We do seminars, we do financial wellness, all the stuff that goes on in the industry. We did an okay job in helping people to accumulate, but it seems like we're still turning the ship into starting to focus more on decumulation or retirement distribution phase. Much of your survey on that topic yet, in terms of the attitude towards that, in terms of plan design, longevity risk? Everybody knows. I'm always worried about, am I going to outlive my income? Knowing and doing something are totally different, right? There's just fear, and then that insecurity. We'll live with the fear and insecurity, but I'm not so sure everybody understand all the different combinations or methodologies that one may contemplate, and how much of those are really should be made available through retirement plan to at least have an opportunity and an option to do something, whatever that may be. Any thoughts on that or any survey results from that?
Yeah, both. and
Both, okay.
and retirement income strategies and drawn down strategies, especially in the context of the plan, of a plan, for at least as long as I can remember, it's almost like the quest for the Holy Grail.
Yeah,
How to
exactly.
figure this out.
Exactly.
And it's so difficult. Yeah, for a plan sponsor, of course, there's concerns about potential fiduciary liability all the way, not just during employment, but all the way through somebody's
Right.
retirement, which is, not
Real. Yeah, it's real.
I think that the concerns are understandable. But to open up conversations, and the other thing is there's no one size fits all approach, because by the time somebody is ready to retire, they have a unique financial situation.
Yeah.
People who are just entering the workforce, their balance sheet is probably 0 and 0. And they're just getting, hopefully, well, if they have student debt, it's a different set of circumstances. But by the time somebody retires, employers and plan sponsors, they don't know that individual's total financial situation,
Sure.
their spouse's situation, health circumstances, home ownership, kids, parents. It's so personal to every individual, that if there was to be a rule of thumb, the rule of thumb is make professional advice, counseling services available for people who don't already have an advisor, or even who do, as a second opinion,
Yeah.
to help figure out what strategies are going to work best for them.
So you think basically more help, more hand holding to walk through at least the planning stage early enough, of course, not the day before you retire to seek
Yes.
advice. It's a little late.
Yes. And that's another also is people maybe milestone birthdays. It's at 50, 55, 60 to have a financial plan. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I consider all critical, and I don't know that we're that good at doing that yet, is somebody has an assumption, I'm going to retire at 65 or I'm going to retire at
Yeah.
67.
Yeah.
All our research tells us almost 6 in 10 retirees say they retired sooner than planned.
Yeah.
And so um, to really factor that into the plan, that maybe we'll pick 65 as somebody's base case scenario. Also have a plan if retirement comes at 61 or at 62,
Yeah.
because statistically, um, it's a distinct possibility that it might happen that way, and to have contingency plans.
So when you think about, we earlier talked about how we define retirement, and we had a really broad conversation regarding the reality is that many after they retire, they really not retire in the 1945 or 55 idea, but really starting to sort of I'm leaving the full-time employment of a career and do something else. It could be related, it could be not related. So do you find that the 62-year-old, the ones who retire is out of health reason, they have to retire, they can't do anymore, or they're just so sick of what I think you mentioned earlier, the rat race, they don't want to deal with that anymore. They want more psychological calmness or less stress, but they are still very vibrant, they still want to do something, either out of necessity or out of desire. So do you see that those two really working in concert with each other, or do you see them as in conflict with each other in terms of early retirement and really, I didn't save enough, or early retirement is really retirement from a traditional career, but it's really not early retirement, but it's just moving on to the next final phase of their slowing down, go into part-time and moving into consulting and maybe a small business, and then eventually retire. Do you see those two in some continuum?
I see them actually as complementary concepts.
Okay.
And what it is, it's also an invitation for age 50 plus career planning.
Mm-hmm.
Often career planning you hear for people in their 20s and 30s,
Right.
but you don't hear about it for people in their 50s or
Yeah.
60s.
Yeah.
But to understand what your skills are and what possible avenues might look like. And a classic example, somebody who's in a physically demanding job,
Mm.
and there's still a lot of those really super physically demanding jobs out there,
Yes.
that they're great, but it reach a certain age
Can't do anymore. Yeah.
that it's just doesn't
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So if you're in one of those types of jobs, to start thinking about what your next chapter might be and exploring that, and what the skills and experience, any credentials, certifications are required that could help you find opportunities in that regard. Also for people who are looking for a next chapter, start talking to people. And this
Yeah.
is my tip is, and this also relates to mentors, and this goes back to my grandparents and my grandmother. One of the things that was so amazing about her when she turned 90, and she was talking all about her friend Emma, who was her mentor. And she's like, oh, Emma's my mentor in old age. She turned 100 this year.
Amazing.
And
Yeah.
and again, it's how we think about things. When you have a friend or somebody and they've figured it out or it's working for them, people love to talk about themselves.
Sure.
Go
Sure.
learn the secrets to their success,
Sure.
and help imagine what your future might look like.
I think you are a very hopeful person. That just spending time with you, you're very positive. So after all these surveys, are you hopeful? And why are you hopeful?
Yes, I am a hopeful person. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic. If I weren't, I wouldn't have a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
Of
Um,
course.
but I believe in people, and I believe we yeah, we live in interesting times. Maybe a little bit too interesting, but there's so many discoveries to be made and ways for people to engage and connect in new and different ways. Things that we're learning about ourselves, things that we're learning about the aging process,
Yeah.
how people live, how people work. Um, the world's just a really exciting place for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and when it you know, if we're all fortunate enough, as each day passes, we all get a day older.
Yes.
And nobody's figured out how to bend time yet. Maybe that'll happen in our lifetime, that we can become time travelers or reverse the aging process. But for right now, as each day passes, we all get a
Yes.
day older, and we all have opportunities to achieve a secure retirement, or at least better our outcomes.
That's wonderful. I can go on, but I think we are probably top of the hour and then some. It's been a fascinating to learn about. First of all, learn about the journey. Second of all, learn about what is currently happening, and learn that there are ways to still. There's never a dead end road. That there are ways that we can still take matters to our own hands and do something about.
Yep.
And it is using the old saying, it takes a village to make it happen, because it takes
Mhm.
different components. But I think number one is being aware, number one being reflective about where you are, where you want to go, map out a way to make sure you understand what it takes to get there, because it doesn't happen by chance, doesn't happen by luck. It happened because of you have a plan, and the better the plan is, the more likely you're going to be in a good place, shall we say.
Mhm.
Is that a fair sort of thinking about what your survey says or
Yeah.
informed you to say? Yeah, yeah.
And
Very good.
even getting good at planning itself, because we know life has curveballs.
Sure.
Sometimes there's there's amazing surprises, and then there's setbacks.
Yeah,
But to be, um, very capable of planning and pivoting, because
yeah,
pivot became our pandemic word, to be able to adjust along and do course corrections along the way, can open up possibilities that we would
yeah.
have never imagined otherwise.
I think having agility, mental agility,
Yeah.
is an important ingredient to survival and prosperity. Don't be stuck in a frame, because that frame may be right at the time that you started. Maybe the frame is totally different,
Yeah.
but no, you need to. So very good. Well, Catherine, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, that beats me reading the 103 pages, whatever it was, because it's not that you have not that the survey didn't inform me, but really giving the sort of connecting tissue and your overall understanding through your study is really helpful. And I hope that people who are listening, we have compelled them to start looking at their situation and make reasonable assumptions, not to be overconfident, put a plan together, and take action.
Yeah.
I think hopefully we get some part of that, if not all of it, for the audience who's listening. So thank you so much. I know I'm going to be seeing you in a month, less than a month. Well, no, a little bit over a month time. And looking forward to continuing this conversation.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Of course.
And
Thank you.
we've talked about this report a lot. Can I tell people where to find it if they want to read it?
Please tell
Okay.
everybody.
You can find our report on our website at transamericainstitute.org. And we're publishing new research about every 6 to 8 weeks. So we hope you'll visit us, and that you'll visit us often. We have a LinkedIn page too. Follow us. We need followers.
I will be one of the followers. So thank you for that. Thank goodness you mentioned it, because I took it just naturally. I thought everybody has it, but not yet. I understand. So thank you very much again, Catherine, and looking forward to spending time again with you.
Thank you. This was really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You can always find more episodes by visiting philipchow.us/podcast or find us on your favorite podcast app. You can always leave us feedback, ask questions, or request a topic for us to discuss by sending an email to pc@philipchow.us.
Views expressed in the Tao of Chow podcast are individual opinions, and they do not represent the employers of each guest or the firm each guest is associated. Our podcasts are for educational and informational purposes only and should not be deemed or viewed as investment advice or recommendations. Please consult your personal financial advisor, investment expert, or investment fiduciary before taking any actions about your plan and investments.